I've got my rod and I've got my bait. All I've got to do is sit here and wait for the big, big fish to come my way, even if it's gonna take all day. Here, fishy, 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 here, fishy, fishy, fishy. Here, fishy, 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 here, fishy, 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 fishing off the pier.
Rudy, you gotta draw something! No, Rudy, right now! You gotta draw something right now! Rudy, this time you really gotta draw something! Rudy, you gotta draw something!
Hey, how's it going? Hope you're all doing well. Hope you're doing good. Hope you had a great weekend. Hope something exciting happened, or at least you were able to get some good rest. I apologize. I am eating right now. So, uh, if my talking is broken up, it is because I am wolfing down my dinner. And it's spaghetti. Well, welcome. Mountain Luke, congratulations on beating Stream Elements. And somehow not being first. I don't know how that happened. Alright. Don't blame me for being late. Don't blame me. Because I swear to you, I sent y'all that message that the stream would be a little late just as I got home. That is the time I got home from work. It's crazy. Work is so mean to me. They keep me there forever. I'm gonna be honest, I almost postponed this to Wednesday, because of the delay, but I got home, I had a little bit more energy than I thought I did. Got a second wind or something. The Dr. Pepper I'm about to drink. Oh, congrats, Zombie, on 50 stream streak. That's awesome. And welcome. I think I saw Ninja Chicken. Yeah, Ninja Chicken, welcome. How's it going? How's everyone doing? Twitch hates me, doesn't let me redeem points, and steals my stream streaks. Dang! Man, Twitch, what the heck? Nerd might be onto something. Maybe it's because you're not drawing enough. Though, I have to point out, Nerd, between the two of you, Mount Moo is at least doing, putting in the work. Putting in the effort. If I remember correctly. Yeah, I saw that homework. I've literally finished a commission. Whatever. Who's better than you, Stevie? Hello, gang. Hope everyone's doing good. I'm alright. We're doing good, or at least I'm doing good. Enjoying my spaghetti. Ah! Very good, very inky. That is a mood. And it's only the beginning of the week. I did good art and you berate me. Well, all I said was, you didn't do your homework. So... No, it's fine. All art is good art. Yours was, I mean, I don't think it counts for, like, fun art, quote-unquote. But technically, it wasn't the art homework, so I guess it is technically fun work-ish. Sort of. This is a rest week for me, though. Last week I was finalizing Linux stuffs. Ooh. Rest weeks are important. Just gonna relax. That's very good. That's healthy. Wish I was healthy. I don't know how to take breaks. I'm not required to do your homework. I have mine. That's true. You got your own homework. I can't be bothered to do that. No, but yeah, how is everyone feeling after, I don't know if you did the most recent draw box homework or not, but if you did, how do you feel about it? How did it go? We were drawing circles. Also, Mountain Loot, your cylinder looks so good, your funnels. It looks so good. Plan on doing some other fun art. Ooh. The Chima art I discussed a while ago. Oh, yeah. This means I can try and catch up on eating this week. You weren't eating! Ah! Definitely eat. Eat. Eating is important. It's how it fuels your brain and the rest of you. I didn't do the homework. You hated that part. Well, I think they came out pretty good. To be honest, I didn't do the, they said if you felt confident with it to try to do, like, skinny to, like, thicker on the outside. And I didn't try that because I was not feeling good about how my circles looked in the first place, so I figured I'm gonna need more practice before I do the more advanced, motions with that. I'm just gonna focus on, can I do a circle with my shoulder? The answer is no. No, I can't. I was just not enough.
Rudy,
Get more food!
draw something! No, Rudy, right now! You gotta
Draw something right now!
Rudy, this time you really gotta draw something! Rudy, you gotta draw something!
I'm gonna go heat up my food real quick. You've inspired me. Good. Eat! Everyone, eat! My shoulder was once again sore after doing them all at once. Oh my gosh. I can't imagine. My arm's sore after doing just one part. Especially that first part. I think the first part was the hardest, and then it got easier. But I also don't think I did very well, to be honest. I feel like they could have come out a lot better if I had practiced a little bit more, but I didn't want to. Today I had pretzels and hummus for one meal, and then just ate half a sandwich and a few fries. That sounds good. Sounds like a good meal. But you could have more, if you want it. No pressure. Look, I am all for eating food as I shovel spaghetti in my mouth. Alrighty. I'm sorry, my chair is so squeaky today. I need some WD-40. Anyway, food is for losers. And more for me. I feel extremely full right now. I might eat around 4 or 5 a.m. or so. 4 or 5 a.m.? 4 or 5 a.m.? What about sleep? I think we missed the plot. What about sleep? Make sure you sleep well, too. Sleep comes after. I feel like sleep should maybe come before. I don't know. I'm no expert on sleep, but sleep is 6 a.m. to 11 a.m. Well, first of all, that's not enough time. You need more sleep than that. But do take care of yourself. Oh gosh. It's trying to do 15 things. Okay. Do take care of yourself, Ninja Chicken. I've grown up with, like, really bad insomnia. So I feel the 6 to 11 thing. I forgot this. I always forget these are my keys. My hotkeys. I'll just start pressing the number pad. Alrighty. A nice 6 to 5. No, don't listen to Nerd. She's the worst example of a good sleep schedule. Same, I've been on like 3 different insomnia meds. Can this chair... There we go. Okay. It just doesn't like me moving, which is very unfortunate because I have to move to eat my food. Okay. Yeah, 3 different insomnia meds. Oh, man. I remember, like, when I was a kid and staying up till, like... Well, staying up all night. Desperately trying to fall asleep. And not succeeding. It's better now, I think, but it's still not... I think it's so easy to just fall back into it. Unfortunately. Try them all at once, a cocktail of random stuff like I would make a... No, don't listen to her. No. Welcome back, Mountain Lou. Got some more food. Some foods. Growing up, it was 3:30 to 4 a.m. to 7 a.m. I remember hitting 6 o'clock because that's when some shows that I would want to watch actually came on. Because there's also no shows to watch. You're like, I can't fall asleep. But also, there's nothing to watch. I'm just bored. And by 6 o'clock, you're like, well, what's the point? I made homemade Alfredo, and I did such a good job. Excellent. Enjoy it. Similar to my Tuesday, Thursday schedule. Oh my gosh. Nerd. Maybe you should have insomnia meds too. Or just stop reading fanfiction. 7 a.m. I had to start getting ready for school. There were 2 years where they changed the start time to 7:15. 2 years, 2 hours of sleep at most. Oh, man. My therapist did suggest a sleep study today. They're just gonna watch you reading fanfiction for 8 hours. Be like, you can't sleep because you're on your phone. Well, I hope everyone is able to get some good sleep, even if it means having to have weird sleep schedules. I think just for some people, weird sleep schedules is how you make it work, unfortunately. But as long as you get some sleep, that's the most important. And unfortunately, the older I get, the more I realize that the people are right. You do need... you need vitamin D. You go outside. Who designed this? That's usually my problem. My vitamins are all messed up, which causes more problems. Hey, Doc, look, he got a hug. I wish my parents would give me a hug. My psychiatrist asked me what my sleep schedule was like. I told her, and she just went, when you go to pick up your meds today, there's going to be an insomnia one also this time. Just going to slip that one in, by the way. Go the heck to sleep. Maybe just go to sleep. Makes you think how many problems that people have. Not like all of them. But if people had good sleep schedules, you'd feel a little bit more regulated. I'm not saying all your problems will go away, because there's no way, but be less sheepy. I'm almost done stuffing my face, I promise. Getting good sleep made me worse, honestly. No! Oh my gosh, no! Ninja Chicken, you might be cursed. I don't know. Have you tried, getting rid of ancient artifacts that may or may not be cursed in your home? Swords that talk to you. A weird pendant that glows a weird color. You know, any of those, maybe just get rid of them. Have you tried the frying pan? Sometimes, some days it be like that. I like feeling productive. I can't do that if I get 8 hours of sleep. I do think some people need less than 8 hours of sleep. Haven't studies shown like 6 to 8 usually? It depends on the person. But, you know, because people are a spectrum, there's not going to be a normal. Unfortunately. Makes it difficult to know what you're supposed to do. I prescribe a bottle of melatonin gummies a day. No. I kid you not. A doctor I work with who has nothing to do with sleeping or anything like that has recommended multiple times. Well, number one, don't drink caffeine late in the day, but who's gonna do that? But like magnesium and warm tea and whatever, some melatonin. This doctor like prescribes like, I don't know, I can't remember if it was 1 milligram or like 5 milligrams. It was something like that of melatonin. I take like 20 to knock myself out. I can't take melatonin. I think the amount of people who can function fully at less than 7 hours of sleep a day is less than 1%. That makes sense. I'm very neurodivergent. 8 hours has zero difference, just less time for me to work on stuff. That's it. That sucks. I really feel like I only work well if I get like 10 hours. And there's no way that I'm ever gonna get 10 hours. And it also just frustrates me because, you're right, there's less time to do stuff. There's stuff I want to do. How dare my body require extra time to sleep? It won't fall asleep, but it wants more sleep. Let's ask Dr. Pepper what he thinks. That's the only doctor I trust. That's true. Dr. Pepper, what do you say? Drink me! I mean, I used to work 16-hour shifts off 2 hours. Oh my gosh. Oh my goodness. Not anymore, I hope. If I get more than 8 hours, my body is more tired than if I got 4. Interesting. I know a lot of people say that. If they get more hours, then they get more tired. I swear to you, I get 8 hours and it's not enough. I need 10. I need 10 hours. I actually feel refreshed getting up if it's 10 hours. This bread is hard. Why is this bread hard? Who made this bread? It's hard bread. I drink mostly water and go outside every so often, so I don't know why I'm tired. It's the up till 4 a.m. reading fanfiction art nerd. I know why you're tired. 24-hour stream when? When I don't have a job to go to in the morning. Plus, like, I'd feel bad for a 24-hour stream, to be honest, because, like I said, I need like 10 hours to feel refreshed. So 24 hours, with 10 of those hours being me sleeping. You'll only be bored as hell. I don't feel tired most days, honestly. Oh, that's good. I'm exhausted all the time, but I think that's the vitamin D. If I ever get not lazy and figure out how to watch anime in bed, I will retire from sleeping. Laptop tab. New goal. Wait, retire from sleeping. Retire? Completely? Completely? You can try. There's too many anime to watch. You right. You right. Boy, do I know it. A portable DVD player. Like the ancient times. But anime on DVD is extremely expensive. For no reason. My stupid anime site got taken down this week too. No! The worst. They're not that ancient. I grew up with one. I grew up around them. I was too poor to have any, but you know, they were there when I was growing up too. And that's how I know they're ancient. Found a backup door. I like the UI better. Are there more hot singles in your area? I say rewatch Yona of the Dawn again. Oh my gosh. I was friends with the pawn shop owner's son. That's the way to do it. Hey, buddy. Hey. We're getting SNES for like $5. Man, I should have done this strategy. What was I thinking? I could have gotten that. What was I thinking? I also tend to rewatch stuff instead of starting new. It's just easier. You know what to expect. You gotta be in the mood for a new thing. And in the mood to be like, that was disappointing, if it's disappointing. You gotta be ready to be disappointed. Unfortunately. What is... Oh. I also tend to rewatch... no, I read that already. I'm dying. Anyway. I'm gonna let the pupper out. Let the pupper be free! Scribble's having friends? Having friends is scary again, confirmed. This is true. Who needs friends when there's... I don't know. Fanfiction? I don't know. Who needs friends when there's dogs? Alrighty, I'm gonna flip over so we can get started and move to the new scene. Now that I'm done stuffing my face. But I may pause at some point to get some, like, dessert or something. I don't know. We'll see. Scribbles, did you see my art from yesterday? You didn't react to it, so I assume you hate me. The commission, I did see it, but, didn't you post it in, like, the dead of night? Yeah, 12:13 a.m. Scribbles was snoozing. Because Scribbles needs to get up at ungodly hours in the morning. It was very good. Did a very good job. A+. It's not that late. I'm old, very old. I talk to like 4, maybe 5 people a week at most in DMs. You guys are talking to people? I'm just not good at it. I'm not good at interacting. Like, if you're in the Discord, I'm not very good. I used to be, and then I got old. And then I stopped talking to people so much. Yeah, let me flip over here. But before we do this, usually I have these things prepared, but I am not prepared. So that's fun. But I did want to talk about a little bit, the art study homework. I'm only going to show, if there were 2 pages, I'm just going to show one. Since we're a little pressed for time, and I know it's a longer lesson. So there is that. I'm gonna head out, have fun. Alrighty. Thanks for stopping by, Art Nerd. I appreciate it. Have fun in doing whatever you're doing. I don't know what you're doing. But have fun. Lurking. Learn great things. Explore great areas. I should have made this canvas wider. Oh well, whatever. It's fine. Okay, so we were drawing circles, and my conclusion again is that it's really hard to do a circle with your shoulder. As you can definitely see, I'm not used to that. It's very wibbly wobbly, and it's not even confidence. It's just that my hand shakes because of the shoulder. Like, because I'm doing the shoulder, it is not a smooth movement. It just wibble wobbles. Let me see if I were to do it like now, with no stabilization. Alright, so I'm like practicing. Like, see, this is a little less wibble wobbly. I also think I got used to digital drawing a little bit more, so it's honestly a little weird to draw on paper at this point, which does not help. But even then, Australia is not a real place, I swear. Why is that? It's not a real place. But yeah, I think the hardest part I had on this one was just, like, shoulder drawing. As you can see, I don't even know how to do a line, so, this one was easier. The planes were already drawn, which was nice. I feel like I did better circles when there were lines there to kind of help guide. Obviously, I did still make, like, egg shapes or whatever. But I mean, this was the first one I did, and I was so proud of it, and then I proceeded to do the rest of them and be sad. But I think these turned out a little bit better. I don't know if it's just, like, it's stuck inside this box that I did a little bit better, or maybe it was the day I had warmed up or something. I don't remember. But yeah. Overall, just a practice drawing from the shoulder, I think, is the real problem with these. And then here's my funnels. And on this one, I actually tried to mark it for myself of being aware of, like, hey, where are you going past? But honestly, I'm not even keeping in line with things right now. Like, they're very pointy circles. They're very egg-shaped circles. Which is a problem. Need to work on that. Again, it's the shape. It's really the shape. It's the movement of my shoulder. I refuse to believe they lost to birds and named a spider Big Boy. I mean, I feel like people anywhere, somewhere, would name a spider Big Boy. That just sounds like something we would name a spider as a joke. But yeah, losing to birds... Birds aren't real. How can you lose to birds? I do think going through the minor axis, is that what it was called? The minor axis? I think that I've got down. At the very least, I have that down. But everything else needs some work. That's okay. Mount Lou, if you're still here, or if you're back from Pupper, do you mind if I share your homework on stream? If not, that is totally fine. Do. Delicious. Well, we can look at that later. Let's see. But I think that was it for the homework. I was less frustrated, I think. I was definitely more frustrated last time with the straight lines. I think I just stopped being serious as much with the circles, which almost is maybe not that good of a thing. I should take it more seriously so I do a little bit better. Circles are super important, but I mean, with practice, we'll get it. But yeah. So I do know that the next part is boxes. So let me pull up Drawbox here. So the next part is boxes. The thing that I'm concerned about is that, like, there's the homework. There's a whole lot of lessons between that and we got a little bit of a later start. But we're gonna see if we can get through this. It's still not as long as maybe it could be. But yeah, we're gonna try to go through the lessons today, and then we'll have the homework and exercises, and that would technically be the end of their lesson 1. We've been splitting up lesson 1 into teensy tiny parts, to be fair. And I think they suggest before lesson 2 you do some, like, challenges to practice and things like that. So technically it's not jumping straight into lesson 2, just in the way that it's built. I want to improve, so I'll probably try to do that extra stuff as well before moving forward, but yeah. So, let's go ahead and get started. Okay. Oh boy, perspective. Okay, here we go. We're going to learn how to draw a box, guys. This is very important. On this page, as well as in the next few, we are going to be discussing perspective. This is a concept that is taught in many other courses and books, although it's primarily through listing out a series of rules than introducing specific techniques, like creating a 1-point, 2-point, or 3-point perspective grid. The way I wish to tackle it is a bit different and admittedly a lot longer. The reason that I found that by merely memorizing rules and techniques, you're left tied to them rather than being able to use them as tools to achieve your goals. Having been subjected to this approach as a student myself, I found it led to more confusion in the long run than understanding. Instead, we are going to talk about those rules. While we are going to talk about those rules, we are going to be delving into the logic those rules are meant to encapsulate. It will be confusing and complex, especially in the next few pages, but don't let that scare you. Understanding the theory is not the goal here. It merely serves to lay down some context, some of which you may grasp, some of which may seem baffling. The true understanding will be developed through the exercises that follow, and even that understanding will develop gradually over time. So don't let yourself feel discouraged by the complexity of the topic. Don't get hung up on the theory, and the worst thing you can do is let it derail you from even reaching the exercises themselves. Okay. I'm back. Did I miss anything important? Well, I did, all I did was share my homework. Did you want to share your homework on stream, Mountain Lou, before we continue? Because I was just about to start the first video. So we haven't totally started yet. I'll mind up to you. Okay. I'm all for sharing other people's art. Okay. I'm just gonna grab one of the pictures. There's that one. There's this one. And there's this one. Circles. Dun dun dun. What is that? I love your commentary, Mountain Lou. Oh my goodness. You're still using the book like sketchbook. I hope that's not messing you up too much. Your lines look much better than mine do. I feel like I struggled with the ones where you draw inside the box thing. This one? This first one? They had you guys drawing wormholes? They had us drawing wormholes, man. Wormholes. I'm sticking with the sketchbook for now. You can see all my circles along the edge just disappear. Oh, yeah. That's fair. That's fair. We can believe you made it, you know. Oh, the second one. Okay. I see. What do you think was like the biggest struggle with that one? Because I thought that one was way easier. I liked the box telling me where to go. I'm also bad at big circles, so I tried those a couple times. I see. I felt honestly, I don't know that I was better at one other than the other. But yeah, I think these look pretty good. I think yours are much less shaky than mine are. Which one was your favorite of the three homeworks? I like that you were able to do like the narrower and then the wider and then the wider. I thought about doing that and then realized I should get good first. Wasn't keeping it in my mind when they were circles at an angle, so I kept doing weird things to compensate the curves. I don't know if that makes any sense. First one was tedious, second one was hard, third one was just a disaster. I think this looks really good. To be honest, I think it looks really good. This looks like a wormhole. This looks like a funnel. Maybe just not knowing where the circle was supposed to go. Yeah, because they want you to touch all four sides. And that's hard when you're trying to still make it look like a circle. That's why mine came out a little egg-looking sometimes. So which one was your favorite? Did I ask that? Maybe I asked that already. I don't remember. I work too long, guys. I don't remember what I'm talking about. Of course, they're all big circles, too, so I just struggled. I think the first one, probably. I see. I think that was probably my least favorite, but genuinely, none of them were, like, super, super difficult. I just need to work on drawing with my shoulder. Once I got that, it's over for all you suckers. But yeah, thank you for doing this with me, Mountain, though. I appreciate it, and thank you for letting me share. It's always encouraging. Though I think you're better at it than me. I'm not very good at circles. I've gotten lazy. I started using the circle tool on digital, which is not good. It makes me lazier. Thank you for doing it as well. I really enjoyed it so far. Oh yeah, absolutely. I know we're learning, despite. Oh gosh, that's really loud. Despite the fact that I feel like there's still like it's very little that we've built up on thus far. I know that this is like super foundational, and it'll come back later. So I'm glad that it's gonna help. And I'm hoping that it's also helping everyone else. I was even thinking about starting to make a ref for Art Fight. Ooh, do it. Do it. I like that you say this after Art Nerds left. Alright, here we go. Actually, let me turn the music down just slightly. So we can actually hear the video. There we go. Oh my god.
I'd initially figured I'd approach this video as it handled the previous ones, as one big lecture. As I wrote out the script, however, I quickly found that it was just going to end up being far too long. While that in and of itself isn't a huge problem, considering how dense the topic is, I'll be breaking it up across multiple
Nerd
videos
doesn't get
instead.
to know.
Our goal is simple. We're going to introduce the concept of perspective. We're
Oh,
going
boy.
to talk about what perspective is, not
Perspective
as
is
this
scary.
daunting, looming villain, but as a tool that can be used to help us achieve specific goals.
What is that shape?
But before we get to all of that, Drawbox is not a perspective course. Drawbox is a
Oh, thank
course that
goodness.
focuses on developing your internal, instinctual understanding of 3D space and how the things we draw exist in 3 dimensions, despite being made up of lines and shapes on a flat page. Perspective is one of the tools we use to achieve that, but it is important to remember that it is just that, a tool. If you are looking for a structured course that delves into all of the technical elements and maths involved in linear perspective, I'd recommend looking at Eric Olson's A Complete Guide to Perspective for Artists, from our sponsor, New Masters Academy. It is very thorough and will patiently guide you through the most basic
but not
principles
sponsored for me.
all the way to the most advanced techniques that can be used to create complex scenes, confident that they will line up with reality. So, boxes. Why are we so obsessed with boxes?
Finally get to the box part of
we're trying
Drawbox.
to learn to think in 3D, and a box is a perfect representation of those 3 dimensions. That is to say, it gives us 3 sets of edges that are parallel to one another in 3D space, each one perpendicular to one another, which matches the relationship of the different dimensions of space. If you've studied any 3D geometry, 3D modeling, or physics, you'll have heard these 3 dimensions represented as X, Y, and Z, though I find in drawing it can be easier to initially discuss them as width, height, and depth,
Is this
all
math
relative to the
again?
viewer looking out into the scene. Just so we're on the same page on that front, I'll define what I mean by each one very briefly. Width is the dimension that runs horizontally perpendicular to the viewer. So you can think of this as aligning to the line on which our own eyes sit, since they span horizontally across our face. Height is the dimension that runs vertically perpendicular to the viewer, so the line that the viewer's nose follows. And lastly, depth is the dimension that moves towards and away from us in parallel to the direction we're actually looking. I often refer to this direction as the viewer's angle of sight. While the only real difference between 3D and 2D is the presence of the depth dimension, it's a pretty big difference. It takes us from looking at some flat lines and shapes on a page and understanding that to be all that is being represented, to viewing that piece of paper as a window that looks out onto a limitless world of depth. The goal is ultimately to take something that exists on a flat surface in 2 dimensions and make it create the illusion that it in fact exists in 3 dimensions. This act is referred to as projection, where we're taking something with a higher order of dimensions and projecting it down onto something with fewer. There are many different kinds of projection that are used to capture 3-dimensional objects on a 2-dimensional page, and each one is geared towards a different set of needs. Perspective projection is the one we'll be focusing on in this course, and it has one concrete goal: to reproduce human binocular vision. That is, what things tend to look like when seen with 2 eyes arranged in the fashion you'd find on a human face. Perspective is all about reproducing what humans see. Orthographic projection focuses just on the view of an object
What the heck
from
is that?
one of a few possible sides. It entirely eliminates the
Vector,
3rd dimension,
that's me.
though this is often made up
Yeah.
for by presenting multiple views of the object, like a side view, a top view, a front view, separately across multiple images.
That's
This is
terrifying.
sometimes referred to as a plan view because it really helps us to understand the object as we plan to draw, model, or otherwise interact with something 3-dimensional. Lastly, isometric projection attempts to capture all 3 dimensions at once, while keeping any edges that are parallel in 3D space parallel in 2D space as well.
It's the
This is very
never-ending
useful
stairs.
in certain kinds of video games, where we need to be able to have the world continue forever, while using the exact same pieces or tiles to represent the world regardless of whether that section is close to us or farther away. Isometric refers to a very specific formula and uses very specific angular relationships between the x, y, and z dimensions of space, but it belongs to a more general category referred to as axonometric projection. Of course, there are other approaches to projection, but you get the point. Our focus here is on perspective projection, which is built around a single core concept: foreshortening.
I've heard that word.
We'll explore
I
that
don't
in the next
understand how to
video.
do it. Okay. So, I didn't get those other 2 at all. Terrible news. If I ever want to do a video game, apparently I need to understand that last one. Unfortunate. Alright, finally we've reached this course's namesake, boxes, and by extension, perspective. Perspective, which serves to help us depict 3D spaces on a flat page, is inextricably tied to boxes for a very simple reason. Where 3D space consists of 3 dimensions, boxes provide us with 3 distinct sets of edges, each of which flow in the direction of one dimension and perpendicular to the other 2. Yeah, I think that's pretty straightforward. They're just saying, hey, we're only going to be teaching this certain thing, not this certain thing. Let's go vertex, edge, vertex, shapes, point. Point representing a vortex. Lines. Line representing an edge. I see. I don't see. I don't know what I'm looking at. Anyway. Drawing has always been a matter of taking things that exist in 3 dimensions and figuring out how to capture them in 2 dimensions. This can be very quickly become confusing, especially when pinning down exactly what the words we use when describing the problems we face really mean. So in the interest of consistency, let's try to set up some guidelines that's on what certain common terms mean and organize them into terms that refer to 3D elements versus terms that refer to 2D elements. Okay, so 2D, we have shape. For our purposes throughout this course, whenever we use the word shape, we are going to be referring to the flat shapes like squares, rectangles, circles, and triangles. That is, things that only exist in 2 dimensions. Line describes a path or stroke drawn on a flat surface. It only moves across the page itself as we're drawing. And point. This describes a dot placed on the page, like those we use to define the start and end points of our lines when employing the ghosting method. They exist exclusively in the 2 dimensions of the flat page. 3D. Form. This denotes a 3-dimensional structure, like a box, a sphere, a pyramid, a cone, a cylinder, as well as more complex or organic structures. While we may draw a representation of a form on a flat page, we are still thinking about it as though it exists in 3D. So, shape is 2D, form is 3D. Edge refers to the hard separation between 2 distinct faces of a given 3D form. When drawn on a flat page, they're represented using lines, but we still need to consider how the edge being represented exists in 3 dimensions and how it relates in 3 dimensions to the edges and forms around it. So line represents the edge in 3D. Vertex, the corners at which different edges meet in 3D space, so instead of a point will represent a vertex, which makes this make more sense now. I don't know why this picture's up here. I feel like it should be down here. But okay. Projection, the act itself of taking something that exists in a 3-dimensional space and capturing on a 2D surface. Or taking anything that exists in some kind of higher order of dimensions and having it represented on a lower order of dimensions is known as projection. Vocabulary, my least favorite part of learning. Well, I mean, luckily you can always Google this. So, hopefully, I mean, it's 6 words, and hopefully you know those 3 words. I hope. I don't know what a point is. In a manner of speaking, if you stand outside on a bright and sunny day and you find yourself casting a shadow on the flat surface of the ground, you're effectively projecting yourself, a 3D object, onto a flat surface with no depth. Those are pretty big words. That's fair. I'm so good at this. This thing does that, not knowing what it's called. The thing that does the thing. Perspective is one approach for projecting 3D space onto a 2D surface, but it's not the only one. In fact, it is only functionally useful if your desire is to replicate human binocular vision. That is, capturing how things look when seen from 2 eyes arranged on a face. There are other approaches that have their own goals, and that's what we talk. Okay, I'm going to try to understand this. Orthographic was this weird thing. Uses multiple drawings of an object in order to capture and define how that object exists in space, only ever depicting 2 dimensions at a time. Top view, side view, front view. But why would you want that? Maybe this is an architecture thing. I don't know. Anyway. Combine all the information of a 3D object in a single drawing by ensuring that every set of edges that are parallel in 3D space are also drawn as parallel to one another in 2D space. Oh, well, that's what he said. Okay. Well, I didn't understand that any better, but that's okay. That's not what we're working with right now. Foreshortening, the magical word that I don't understand. Vanishing points are often taught as a concept that we must take for granted. Vanishing points exist, and here's how we use them. I do, however, believe it is worthwhile to explore how the concept of vanishing point emerges naturally out of the underlying principles of convergence, and so that's what we'll be doing throughout this page. Okie dokie.
Virginia,
Ah!
we are counting on you.
Ads! Terrifying. They're still going. Oh my gosh. Obama, my beloved. Oh my gosh, it's still going. Hang on. How long is this ad? There we go. Okay, we got it. Thanks, Obama. Thanks for the ad. It's the Obama jump scare.
Because we only have 2 dimensions represented on our piece of paper by default, by looking at the actual lengths and distances represented on the page, we can only really discern the physical length or measurement of things that sit perpendicular to the angle in which we're looking. Meaning, if we've got a box that is aligned such that we're looking straight on at one of its faces, we can judge its height and width, but we have no way of judging its depth. Foreshortening arms us with the tools to help the viewer understand the other lengths, of which some components exist in the depth of the scene. To put it simply, a piece of paper can only give us so much direct information. We use foreshortening to help provide extra info so the viewer's brain can better and more completely understand what it's looking at. The primary manifestation of foreshortening is something you're probably familiar with to some extent. As things get farther away from us, they appear smaller. They are of course not actually physically getting any smaller, but they appear that way to our eyes. Another manifestation of foreshortening is the degree shift that we talked about in regards to the ellipse section of this lesson. Where given a cylinder, the farther end will appear wider than the end closer to the viewer. This actually applies to all forms, even boxes, where the far end will appear proportionally wider. That said, in this video we're primarily going to focus on the shift in scale, the tendency for things to get smaller as they move farther away. So if you're unsure of what the degree shift is, I recommend that you visit the ellipses video after watching this one. I'll include a link in the description, but since you're at this video, I do expect you've watched it already. Now our gut instinct here is to think about this scale shift as it applies to whole objects. This student, for example, is getting farther from us, and so it's getting smaller. It's applying to the entirety of the student. Eventually he'll get so far away and so small to our perception that he'll collapse into nothing but the tiniest little speck, which eventually our eyes will no longer be able to see. We refer to this, the point that is infinitely far away from us, as a vanishing point, one of the building blocks of technical plotted perspective. We can also think about this in terms of distances between sets of objects. If we clone our student and have all of them run away from us, the distances between them shrink, just as the students themselves do. But the student is a complicated object, made up of tons of smaller forms, and a lot of stress-induced illnesses. We can think of him as though he's made up of a series of dots, and as he moves farther away from us, the distance between those dots shrinks. Instead of thinking about foreshortening as though it impacts entire objects at once, we can think about how it applies to space in general. The spaces between the parts of a single object
get away from us.
and the space between different objects in the scene. Let's set aside our complicated student and go back to talking about the problem in a much simpler form by looking at boxes once again.
He shows you that so you'd rather look at a box.
A box is made up of a series of points, or vertices, all connected to one another by edges in 3D space. The box simply allows us to see this in a much simpler state, while still demonstrating all 3 dimensions of space. Each box features 3 sets of edges, a set that goes across the width dimension, one that goes across the height dimension, and one that goes across the depth. If you look at the box from an angle like this, it might not be entirely clear which corresponds to the width and which corresponds to the depth. But honestly, it doesn't really matter that much, as we're just labeling them for the sake of explanation. Each set contains 4 edges, all of whom are parallel to one another in 3D space. This is where terminology becomes important, so I'm going to try my best to be consistent. When I'm talking about 3D space, I'm going to refer to them as edges. When I'm talking about their projection onto a flat, 2-dimensional page, I'm going to describe them as lines. Because we're talking about how to draw 3-dimensional objects, we are going to be constantly jumping back and forth between talking about the 3D space we're trying to represent and the 2D space in which we're representing it. As each of these edges extend farther back in 3D space, moving away from the viewer, the distances between the lines that represent them on the page get smaller, until finally they converge to a single point. That point, which we identified earlier, is the vanishing point for this set of edges. The vanishing points for edges that run parallel to the ground plane will be situated on the horizon line. Although you can certainly have vanishing points that aren't on the horizon, it just means that the edges it governs are not parallel to the flat ground like these vertical height edges. Keep this in mind. As a set of edges rotates in 3D space, the vanishing point that they converge to will move around. We do not control this vanishing point directly, but it is their orientation in 3 dimensions that allows us to identify the correct location for the edge's vanishing point. It's worth calling out the fact that as those edges rotate, the vanishing point will not move at a consistent rate along the horizon line. This can actually get kind of confusing, so don't worry too much about it if it doesn't make sense right away, but the further out to either side of your image, and even beyond it, your vanishing point goes, the more it's actually going to move for every degree the edges rotate. This is something we'll look at a bit more closely in the next video.
I'll be honest, guys. I didn't get that at all. I'm confused. Let's see here. The orthographic and axonometric projection methods shared on the previous page both feature a notable advantage over perspective projection. If you want to find out how long any of the lengths or distances are, you can simply grab a ruler and measure it out right there on the page. This makes them excellent for laying out the instructions on how to build a new table from IKEA, but not so great at capturing objects as we see them in our daily lives. Perspective projection loses this convenience in order to create a more realistic impression of how we see things. And in doing so, it results in a problem. We need some other way to judge distances when looking at perspective drawings. In perspective projection, we can only usefully measure the length of edges that run fully perpendicularly. Oh, hold on. Okay. We can only usefully measure the length of edges that run fully perpendicularly to the viewer's angle of sight. Basically, those edges that don't slant towards or away from the viewer through the depth of the scene. For all the other edges that aren't restricted to this fairly limited set of orientations, measuring the length of the line on the page only gives us part of the story. We still have the other unseen component which cannot be perceived in the limited 2 dimensions we're drawing in. Can we go back to drawing circles? No, it's box time. This is draw a box, not draw a circle. We're done with circles. Foreshortening is the term we use to describe the other visual cues that can help us understand how much longer the edge actually is relative to the part of it we're able to see. We've actually already encountered one manifestation of foreshortening where we discussed the degree shift in the context of ellipses and cylinders. They're the amount by which the far ellipse becomes wider than the closer end tells us whether the length of the given cylinder really is only as long as we can see on the page, or if there's considerably more being hidden. There is, however, another more prominent way in which we can see how foreshortened the form is. As things move farther away, they appear smaller. We know this. This rule applies not only to those whole objects, but also to all of their individual components, as well as the distances between those individual components. As the object moves farther away, those individual components start pulling closer together. Same goes for entirely separate objects. If 2 objects are placed 1 meter apart and are moved away from the viewer while maintaining that 1 meter distance, for the viewer they will still appear as though that gap is getting smaller the further back it moves. Eventually, as these objects move so far away that the distance between them, which is still 1 meter in 3D space, will be imperceptible from where the viewer is. This point, where the distance between the objects appears to be 0 and the objects themselves converge together to a single point, is known as the vanishing point. Okay. Okay, a vanishing point is the point to which any set of parallel edges will eventually converge. Looking at the example above, we have two characters of the same height positioned at different distances from the viewer. We can plot a series of parallel edges in 3D space from a location on the closer character through the same location on the farther character, for example, from the top of one's head to the others, or one wrist to the others, and so on. Okay. Well, your wrists aren't the same on that side, but okay. If we continue to follow these edges, we'll find that from the viewer's eyes, the distance between those edges continues to shrink until they finally converge to a single point, which we've marked VP. Okay. Looking at the same situation, but with a simple box, we can see how it features 3 separate sets of edges, which matches up with our X, Y, and Z dimensions of 3D space. Each set is composed of edges that are parallel to one another in 3 dimensions, and which converge towards their own shared vanishing point when drawn as lines on a flat page. It's how quickly these converge and how far off or how close the vanishing point actually is to the form in question that allows the viewer to gauge how long each edge actually is. The more rapid the convergence, we sometimes refer to this as dramatic foreshortening, the more that edge exists in the depth dimension, and so the longer it physically is. The more gradual the convergence, which we refer to as shallow foreshortening, the closer the edge's length is to what we can actually see and measure on the page. While in this course we are not particularly interested in being hyper-aware of where exactly our vanishing points fall, there are some basic rules of thumb that we can keep in mind which revolve around the concept of the horizon line. While the horizon can mean a few different things, we'll get into that a little later, for our purposes here we can define it as the far end of our ground plane. That is the far end, which is infinitely far away. In this context, the ground plane is just a flat surface upon which we're standing, with our head level, not tilted in any way. If the set of edges governed by a given vanishing point runs parallel to the ground plane, then that vanishing point will fall somewhere on the horizon line. We can see this in the example above for the vanishing point to the far left and the one to the far right. Okay. If the set of edges in question is tilting upward relative to the ground plane, then the vanishing point will be somewhere above the horizon line. If the set of edges in question is tilting downward relative to the ground plane, then the vanishing point will be somewhere below the horizon line, like the lower vanishing point in the example above, where the set of edges is completely perpendicular to the ground plane. Oh, okay, so this is the ground plane, the white. And so these are running parallel along this plane. I was getting confused with the horizon. And because they're running parallel to this plane, they're going to hit this line. This is below, right? Tilting downward relative to the ground plane, which it is. It's perpendicular. Then it's going to be below the horizon line. The horizon line's up here. It's all the way down there. Okay, that kind of makes sense, I guess. I don't see an airplane anywhere. Where the heck is the plane? False advertising. What happens when a set of edges rotates? This is something we're going to delve into much more deeply in the next page, but there are two main things to keep in mind. A vanishing point's position in the composition... Whoa, I'm reading too fast. Okay. A vanishing point's position in the composition depends on how the edges it governs are oriented in 3D space. So if the edges rotate and their orientation changes, then its vanishing point will move. For example, if as shown in the example below, we have a box that is being rotated around its vertical axis The two sets of the horizontal edges will rotate, resulting in their orientations changing. Since they're only rotating along the vertical axis, they won't tilt upwards or downwards. They'll remain on the horizon line, along which they will slide. That makes sense. They're still parallel. As the box rotates clockwise, the vanishing points will slide towards the right. Okay, I'm following. Though in the example below, both sets of edges rotate by the same consistent amount, their vanishing points will actually move at different rates. How quickly they slide along the horizon depends on where in the frame they are. As the left vanishing point moves towards the center, it will slow down, moving less and less for every degree of the box's rotation. Conversely, as the right vanishing point moves further away from the center and continues off past the right side of the compositional frame, it will slide more and more for every degree of that box's rotation. Well, the fact that the VPs slide more further out to the side and less closer to the center, is all we actually need to know in order to be able to rotate our form accurately enough. In the next page, we'll be using this particular behavior to explore the concept of vanishing points at infinity, and how they can lay the foundation for the 1, 2, and 3-point perspective grids that are commonly taught to students, which I've never heard of. So, time to learn something new. Oh no! 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 Not again! What the heck? I just wanted to know how to draw! Oh. On this page, we definitely get rather technical, theoretical, and mathematical. It's okay, screens. It's okay. It's all coming back. The trauma. It's perfectly okay if these concepts don't speak to you and none of them ultimately make very much sense. That will not hinder your progress throughout this lesson or this course as a whole, and so I do not recommend dwelling too much on this material. Go through it once, regardless of how confidently you feel you understand what's explained here, continue onwards. You can always revisit these concepts later, but even if you never completely understand them, that's fine too. Personally, I did not understand them, even as a working concept artist and illustrator, and instead only had to put the effort in to really understand what was going on behind the scenes in order to teach the concepts that ultimately emerged from this theory. Okie dokie. We'll get through this together. Together.
Doug Jr.'s
my gosh.
mustache, is it real?
It's customizing your car.
We're not listening or watching this stupid ad. Screw you, ads. Are you done? Get. What the heck?
Of course, far be it from me to strike such common phrasing from the student artist's
Whoa.
dictionary, so I'll settle for... Before we get to this one, I want to make one...
Pause. Pause. I forgot my hotkeys, like, move this around so I can't hit them. Okay.
Before
My
we
bad.
get to this one, I want to make one thing crystal clear. What we're discussing in the next few minutes, that is, why as a box rotates at a consistent rate, its vanishing points will slide more rapidly or more slowly depending on where they are on the horizon, is not something you're likely to understand immediately.
Okay.
You're not expected to.
Thank goodness.
I'm adding this disclaimer during my editing because I realize that while I do mention this, it's after the explanation. Many of you may find yourselves confused and may rewind to the beginning to rewatch that section over and over without ever having reached the part that clarifies that you're not meant to fully grasp it right now. This is going to be something you will encounter multiple times throughout this course. Concepts may be explained that you will not fully understand immediately. Some students find that to be quite frustrating. It's quite normal to want to understand everything in its entirety before attempting to
What do
apply
you
it
mean I
in
can't
order
just
to avoid
understand
mistakes.
everything?
But as I explain at length in Lesson 0, this is how the course is designed. Do not try and bend the course to the way you would like it to be. Follow it as it is designed and accept that concepts will be understood gradually by doing the exercises. By making attempts, by making mistakes, and by allowing those mistakes to help others understand what we do and don't quite grasp so they can fill in the gaps. What we're covering here is honestly less significant than most of the things we cover. It's really just an explanation as to how the consistent rotation of a 3D form results in an inconsistent displacement of its vanishing points. It's worth going through, but completely unnecessary in order to apply. In fact, much of what I explain here, I only came to understand in the last couple of years by reflecting on the concepts that I was teaching students and through
So what if we
conversation with other
understand it
instructors,
immediately?
namely Aline Fouard, an instructor of perspective and human
Never mind,
anatomy at
those
l'École
pictures look
Supérieure
terrifying.
de réalisation audiovisuelle in Paris, France. That was a good while ago, so they might not actually remember. Anyway, long story short, I didn't even understand this as a student or as a working illustrator and concept artist, so don't get hung up on it if you don't either. And with that, let's get started. Normally, we look at perspective scenes from the eyes of a hypothetical viewer, or out of a camera lens looking out onto the scene. But we can actually make a bit more sense of this concept of rotation and how it impacts the vanishing point's positions by looking at everything from above. So here we can see the viewer and the box they're looking out at. Let's add in a horizon. Remember, the horizon line is meant to represent an infinite distance away from the viewer. That means that every point along the horizon is an equally infinite distance away. Given that all these distances are equal when measured from the viewer's location, rather than representing the horizon line with a straight line, we can represent it as a circle with the viewer at its center. Now for this last piece, you'll have to bear with me. Here we have the box represented as a rectilinear square or rectangle, meaning that their lines are set at 90 degrees to one another. While normally this is correct, we're not trying to draw the box itself from a top-down view, but rather we're trying to understand what the viewer is seeing, and more importantly, why. In order to do this, we introduce the vanishing points
Gotta head out early as per usual. Have a good rest of stream. Thank you, Ninja Chicken. I appreciate you hanging out. Have a good night. Try to get some sleep. Definitely try to get some food.
as seen by the viewer, which will result in some deformation from our current abstracted top-down point of view. So if you recall, I explained that as our given sets of edges turn in space, or in this case, as the whole box and its two horizontal sets of edges rotate, the vanishing points that are already off to the side will slide further along the horizon line, whereas those closer to the middle will slide less. When we view the horizon line as a circle, however, all of the vanishing points move by a consistent amount, regardless of where along it they are. Thus, this inconsistency can be understood as the result of the flattening of the horizon. Before we can illustrate this, we first need to correct our diagram a bit, as the relative distance between the viewer and the object and the circular horizon are incorrect. Between the viewer and the object, we have a non-infinite distance, but between the object and the horizon line, there is an infinite distance. That is, because the horizon is infinitely far away. This means, and those of you who are not mathematically inclined will just have to trust me on this one, that we can effectively say that at scale, the distance between the viewer and the object is basically zero in the face of the full distance between the object and the horizon. This allows us to combine the positioning of our object and viewer.
I feel like half of math is just being like, well, we can just assume this is zero. It's basically zero. So we'll just make it zero. There are, like, so many times, math and physics, that they're just like, it's basically zero. We can just call it zero. What? That seems like cheating. There's a veggie tray I saw in the fridge earlier that piqued my interest, honestly. More food will be consumed in a few hours. Excellent, excellent. Eat more food, and have a good night.
Necessary to demonstrate how the vanishing points behave as the horizon is flattened. Getting back to that, given these vanishing points on the circular representation of the horizon, if we want to understand where they'd fall on the flattened horizon, we can simply draw a line from the viewer through the given vanishing point and see where it intersects with the flat horizon line. Note as well what happens as these vanishing points slide along the circle, and how it impacts their positioning along the flat horizon line that the viewer sees. Along the top, you'll see the same from the viewer's eyes. As the box rotates, the right vanishing point accelerates as it moves away from the center of the frame until this line extension runs perfectly parallel to the flat horizon line and perpendicular to the viewer's angle of sight. We consider this vanishing point to be at infinity. and any lines that are meant to converge to it will remain parallel when drawn on the page, as the viewer now sees. Conversely, as the vanishing point on the left moves towards the center of the frame, it slides along the horizon more slowly. Now that you're all properly confused, here's the
Yes.
kicker. Very little of what I just painstakingly explained actually matters. Why? Perfect perspective is not better, nor is it more useful than good enough perspective.
Good
It is,
enough.
however, more cumbersome, and worrying about it will get in the way. For our purposes through this course, where we're not worried about things being perfectly correct, but rather close enough, we needn't worry about exactly how much
That's
the
only
vanishing
good
point should
enough?
move. All that matters to us here is that the
I'd hate
more
to
our
see their
edges rotate
bad.
and the closer they get to being perpendicular to the viewer's angle of sight, the further out to the side that vanishing point will move. And as an extension of that, when our edges are fully and perfectly perpendicular to the viewer's angle of sight, the vanishing point will be infinitely far, resulting in the lines that represent those edges on the page never converging and remaining entirely parallel, both in 3D space as edges and in 2D space as lines.
What the heck is this middle of the video ad? Nonsense. I don't think he had ads in the previous ones. This is weird. I don't like it. I don't like it at all. You assume ideal conditions so you get to cheat. Ridiculous. You can't assume ideal conditions. It's never ideal. It's
This
like...
is how we get to something you may have heard of if you've studied anything about perspective before.
No.
2-point and 1-point perspective. Just remember, there's no such thing as 0-point perspective. So you should never be drawing with all your vanishing points at infinity if your intention is to replicate what humans see. And just to get in before someone calls out, well, isn't isometric or axonometric projection 0-point perspective? No, they're not. They do not fall under perspective projection and do not share its goals.
You
They
can't
exist
see.
in their
Why
own
can't you see?
category and
Ah, hold on. Going back.
have heard of if you've studied anything about perspective before. 2-point and 1-point perspective. Just remember, there's no such thing as 0-point perspective. So you should never be drawing with all your vanishing points at infinity if your intention is to replicate what humans see. And just to get in before someone calls out, well, isn't isometric or axonometric projection 0-point perspective? No, they're not. They do not fall under perspective projection and do not share its goals. They exist in their own category and cannot be referred to as perspective in the context of projection. This confusion usually arises from people using perspective as a synonym for projection, which is incorrect and very misleading. Just like the distinction between edges and lines, as well as shapes, which for our purposes refer only to two-dimensional elements like circles and squares, and forms,
Vocabulary.
which refer to three-dimensional elements like spheres and boxes, the wording we use to describe what we're doing is important.
What?
Moving on, let's explore how this concept of vanishing points at infinity results in the 1, 2, and 3-point perspective grids people talk about when discussing perspective. It is not saying that an entire scene can be represented with just 1, 2, or 3 vanishing points, because that would only allow for 3 sets of edges with 3 specific orientations. Rather, it's a way to talk about 3-dimensional space as a grid. This kind of grid can be used as a reference. If you know what your major axes are, you can estimate how an arbitrary diagonal would be laid across if your spatial reasoning skills are developed far enough. It also happens that a lot of human structures adhere quite closely to grids. There will always be deviations, but if you think about a building,
Rectangles are pretty
boxy.
easy.
That's how we end up with these kinds of simplifications. What I want you to keep in mind most of all, however, is that regardless of whether you're talking about a 2-point perspective grid, where one set of edges, usually the vertical one, is drawn with parallel lines that do not converge, or about a 1-point perspective grid, where 2 sets of edges, usually the width and height, are represented with parallel lines on the page. Each of these are still dealing with 3 distinct sets of edges, and therefore they're always dealing with 3 individual
I have
vanishing
no idea what
points.
this is.
It's just that some of them are at infinity, points at infinity, if
My
your
gosh.
intention
Ah!
is to replicate what humans see. And just to get in before
Pause. Sorry. Forgot I can't press my hotkeys. Gosh dang it. Where is it? There we go. Okay.
these are still dealing with 3 distinct sets of edges, and therefore they're always dealing with 3 individual vanishing points. It's just that some of them
I hit
are
my
at
mic.
infinity,
Sorry.
but they still exist. We still need to be thinking and talking about them as they exist. Whereas the terminology of 1-point and 2-point perspective tends to make us ignore them, which I find really hurts the development of our underlying spatial reasoning skills. Of course, far be it from me to strike such common phrasing from the student artist's dictionary, so I'll settle for doing my best to clarify what they really mean. All of this can certainly be kind of confusing, and a lot of people will be left asking, well, when should I use 1 or 2-point perspective instead of 3-point? There are 2 answers to this, with one of them simply being that the number of vanishing points you keep in mind, whether 1, 3, or 862, depends on the number of sets of parallel edges in the object or scene you're drawing, but that's not a terribly useful answer. There is, however, a rule of thumb that I can offer to help you make a bit more sense of what 1-point, 2-point, and 3-point perspective really tell us about the space in which we're working. It comes down to thinking about a single box in the world and considering how it's oriented in relation to the viewer. If the box is rotated such that we're looking straight into one of its faces, or close enough to it, then you can think of this box as being drawn in 1-point perspective, with the other 2 vanishing points being at infinity. If the box is rotated such that we're looking straight into one of its edges, or again, close enough to it, then you can think of the box as though it's drawn in 2-point perspective, with one of its vanishing points being at infinity. And lastly, if the box is rotated such that it's really more one of its corners that's pointing at the viewer, then it's drawn at 3-point perspective. All of its vanishing points are concrete as opposed to infinite, and all of your sets of parallel edges will converge when drawn as lines on the page, rather than remaining parallel in 2D space as well.
It
This
means
is
more than
easy
one
enough to
horizon
apply to
or
a
just
single
be
box,
infinity?
but
I
if you're
have
trying
no
to
idea.
think about what kind of grid to use for an entire scene, the box you're thinking of for this rule of thumb formula.
I fear that the things he's talking about right now are assuming that I have had any sort of training or information beforehand. I have no idea what he's talking about. I've never heard of this stuff. I didn't take any classes. I don't know what this is. I don't know what he's talking about. What are you talking about? There has to be more than one, right? How would the 3-point work? I'm so confused.
Would be set at the orientation that is most common.
We aren't
across
supposed to
the
understand.
objects in your
Right.
scene, or a rough average of the objects in your scene.
Don't need to worry about it
I
at all.
can't really say this enough. These are just simplifications, and while they can help us out towards the beginning, it is important that you get used to the idea of thinking less in terms of specific point perspective grids, and more about the idea that there's a vanishing point, whether concrete or infinite, for every set of parallel edges in the scene, and that a vanishing point goes to infinity when it is oriented perpendicularly to the viewer's angle of sight.
Okay. Sure, man. Whatever you say. Okay, at the end of the last section, we looked at how vanishing points behave as the edges they govern rotate in 3D space. Here we're going to explore why they behave inconsistently, sliding along the horizon line at different rates depending on where along it they are. See, he says this, but I was watching it, and I don't see it. I'm not seeing it. They look like they're moving at the same rate to me. If anything, I think it's the opposite. Like, the other one was moving faster than the one he said was moving slow. I don't know. I'm confused. I mean, I believe him. He definitely knows what he's talking about. I don't know what I'm talking about, but it didn't look like that to me. But we're not supposed to understand, actually. We don't need to understand anything. Let's see. Okay. Normally when we look at a scene, it's through the eyes of a hypothetical viewer, the direction angle of sight. Let's see, we're looking from top down. We know the horizon is at all points along its length infinitely far away. From the viewer, infinity is a tricky concept. It doesn't actually exist. Physics. In theoretical mathematics, we treat it as though it is an actual concrete value. Theoretical mathematics. Let's see. Okay. Okay, so it's a circle. See, I was following this part. This part wasn't too bad. Other issue is that between the object and the viewer, there is a concrete non-infinite distance. We know that any value of infinity is equal to any other value of infinity, so another factor we must consider is that infinity is so massive that no matter how big of a concrete value to subtract from it, it will not cease to be infinitely massive. So if the distance between the viewer and the horizon is infinity, then the distance between the object and the horizon is infinity. Then the distance between the object and the viewer is really inconsequential, so it might as well be 0. We're just going to assume 0, because that makes it easier. Okay. Note how, as the box rotates clockwise, while the vanishing points on the circular horizon move at a consistent rate, once projected onto the flat horizon, the right horizon stretches out further and further. Is that what he was talking about? Is that the stretching? Because, yeah, okay, I see that. I see that. That makes sense. Maybe that's what he was meaning. As we can see here, we reach an extreme where the right vanishing point no longer can be projected onto the flat horizon line. It ends up running parallel, so they never converge. This is something that throughout this course we refer to as vanishing point at infinity. Vanishing point at infinity is equivalent to runs horizontal across the screen. While the lines we draw to represent the edges, this vanishing... What does this say? I can't read this. Okay. While the lines we draw to represent the edges this vanishing point governs will not converge when drawn on a flat page, we must still think as though the vanishing point still exists. It can be tempting to simply disregard the vanishing point altogether since the edges it governs can be drawn as lines that are parallel on the page, but this leaves us prone to focusing too much on our drawings as a series of marks on a flat page and forgetting that we're representing things that exist in 3 dimensions. Whether or not a vanishing point is at infinity depends entirely on the orientation of the edges it governs. While it may be tempting at times to do so, it would be incorrect to force a vanishing point to infinity. We do not actually control where our vanishing points should fall. Rather, we control our intended orientation for a given set of edges, and it is that which determines where the vanishing point will fall and if the vanishing point will be at infinity. Okay. If you studied perspective at all of the past, I have not, then something you may have come across is the 1, 2, 3 point perspective. Okay. Point in this case refers to vanishing points, and it comes about by looking at situations where either 1 or 2 vanishing points are at infinity. When drawing in 1 point perspective, all of the horizontals and verticals are drawn parallel on the page. Something we now understand to be the result of these edges running perpendicular to the viewer's angle of sight. When drawing in 2 point perspective, all the verticals are drawn parallel on the page, essentially because all of the objects being drawn are sitting on the ground plane, so the verticals all run perpendicular to it and to the viewer's angle of sight, resulting in the vanishing point governing them being at infinity. 2 main problems. Firstly, it creates the impression that these vanishing points don't just go to infinity, as we describe here. Those vanishing points cease to exist. 1 point perspective tells us that there's only one vanishing point to be concerned with, which can foster a rather misguided understanding of the perspective. You're losing me. 1, 2, 3. Just severely limit the complexity of the forms we can include. We'd be limited to only boxes. Everything must align to one of 3 very specific orientations. Okay. These are tools. Okay. These are tools and I don't know how to use them, so I'm going to kind of ignore them for right now. 0-point perspective does not exist. Remember, it does not exist. It's not real. It's not a thing. This is most often a matter of a student confusing isometric axonometric projection with perspective projection. As discussed earlier, these are entirely different strategies for capturing 3D information on a 2D surface, each one having fundamentally different goals. Okay. Well, the good news is that we didn't have to understand that part. And I didn't. Okay. In the last page, I explained that 1, 2, and 3-point perspective are simplifications that can, when used without proper understanding, have a negative impact on how a student understands the manner in which perspective can be used as a tool. That does not, however, mean that it is without its uses. Below, I will explain situations where one can simplify the approach to constructing a box based on how it's oriented in space. Just keep in mind these are loose guidelines and depend very much on the circumstances of what you're drawing. Additionally, they only really apply to single boxes. That may not seem particularly useful, but you'll be surprised just how often you end up drawing boxes, not as the final goal, but as a tool to help define a chunk of space in which to construct a given object. Each of the cases below involve drawing a singular box. These simplified guidelines will help you decide whether this box should be drawn in 1-point perspective, meaning if the box's orientation is close enough to perpendicular to the viewer on 2 axes, allowing for 2 vanishing points at infinity. Okay. 2-point perspective, if the box's orientation is close enough to the perpendicular to the viewer on 1 axis, allowing for 1 vanishing point at infinity. Or 3-point perspective, the box's orientation would not allow for any of the vanishing points to be at infinity. Okay. You're losing me. In doing so, each one will have you consider the general silhouette of the box you wish to draw. That is the 2D shape it will result in when drawn on the page. These guidelines are suggestions for you to use outside of this course. Do not employ them for any of the exercises you're doing here, especially not ones like the box challenge or cylinder challenge, which will have us drawing forms that are randomly rotated in space. Okay. 1-point perspective simplified. Consider the box you wish to draw and the general silhouette its orientation will result in when drawn on the page. If the center of the silhouette is roughly over one of the box's faces and is not too close to an edge or corner, then you can likely get away with drawing this box in 1-point perspective. This means that 1 vanishing point will be inside of or very close to the box's silhouette, but the other 2 can be placed at infinity, allowing you to draw those edges as parallel on the page. The closer to the silhouette's center drifts to an edge or corner, the more off this will end up appearing, so do not try to force it. Okay, so like these lines are parallel, and these lines are parallel, but that line and that line and that line, that line, those are going off to infinity, right? That's what they're talking about? I think. Okay. If the general silhouette of your box, once drawn, is centered close to an edge, you can get away with drawing it in 2-point perspective, meaning with 2 sets of parallel edges drawn as lines that converge toward concrete vanishing points, and 1 set of parallel edges whose vanishing point is at infinity, allowing them to be drawn as parallel on the page. The closer the silhouette's center drifts to a corner, the more it'll start to look distorted. So you're facing this edge, or this edge, or this edge. This one looks like you're focusing on the point a little bit, but there's the edge, I guess. There's the edge. That way. That way. I'm a little confused, but okay. Lastly, if you find that the box silhouette is centered close to one of the box's corners, then there's not much that can be done. Attempting to force any of the vanishing points to infinity will result in a ton of distortion, so that should absolutely be avoided in these situations. Oh, okay. Man, I don't know. I don't know what I'm gonna move on. I'm gonna move on. I'm gonna move on. Luckily, the homework has, like, it breaks stuff down for you as well. I feel like this is just information, and then we can, one day, you'll go back and be like, oh yeah, I know what this means. Maybe. I don't know. This page addresses a few independent concepts that you may come across when dealing with perspective more broadly. While you should go through the page at least once, this is meant more to be a reference to refer back to later if and when these concepts come up in your studies, whether in this course or outside of it. So it seems like these last couple of things are just like, here's some extra stuff with boxes, but that's not the main point. Okay, foreshortening is the rate at which an object gets smaller relative to its distance from the viewer. Using a box as an example, if the far end of the box is considerably smaller than the end nearest to the viewer, then it's got a lot of foreshortening applied to it, often described as being more dramatic foreshortening. Okay. If both ends of the box are close to the same size, with the far end only being slightly smaller, then it's considered to have very little foreshortening or shallow foreshortening. Okay. Foreshortening of an object tells us certain things about it. If an object has really dramatic foreshortening, it's usually either very large, like when you look at the top of a tall building from the ground, there's a visible size difference in the base of the top, or it's extremely close to your eye. If it has shallower foreshortening, it's going to either be smaller or a more relatable hue and scale, or very far away. It's important that you keep this consistent in your scene. That is, if you have two objects that are meant to be the same size, it isn't necessarily enough just to have the closer one be bigger and the farther one be smaller. If you have the farther one have more dramatic foreshortening, that's going to immediately be glaringly inconsistent, and your viewer is going to have trouble making sense of it. For that reason, I use more dramatic foreshortening quite sparingly. It's also worth considering what is going to read as being the same size. If you have a bunch of boxes in your scene and nothing else, like apparently an exercise we're going to have, then those boxes will automatically read as being the same size whether you mean for them to or not, because that's what the brain expects. As such, having inconsistent foreshortening there is going to throw things off, even if you mean for certain boxes farther away to be absurdly large. Oh, that's true. Those do look like the same size. You've probably heard about the horizon line, which establishes the ground plane in the scene. You can also usually think of it as the eye line, as it is the line that represents where your eyes are relative to the scene you're looking at. If it's very high, then your eyes, and therefore you, are high up, with the bulk of your scene unfolding beneath your altitude. If it's very low in the frame, your eyes are close to the ground, as everything unfolds higher up. When drawing a box, if that box is sitting on the ground and therefore parallel to your vision, so your head is straight and so is the box, two of its vanishing points are going to sit on the horizon line. The second you tilt your head, something sometimes referred to as a Dutch angle or a Dutch tilt in cinematography, your eye line is going to tilt along with it, but the box's vanishing points will not follow. As such, you can think of there being a number of different important lines that will usually, but not always, be represented by the same line. The viewer's eye line, a line which passes through both of your eyes and tilts whenever your head does. The horizon line, which defines the ground plane, and the horizontal axis of the object, in this case a box, on which its horizontal vanishing points sit. When the box is set at an angle, this line tilts correspondingly. To repeat, the eye line, horizon line, and object's horizontal axis will frequently be the same, but not always. Eye line. That's confusing. Okay. Distortion. It is important to realize that there's some flexibility to all of this. With two-point perspective, you can't be looking at the box from too high or too low of an angle, but you have a bit of wiggle room as to what constitutes too high or too low. Same goes for one-point perspective, where close enough to looking straight at one of the faces of the box will still work. When you start pushing the boundaries of these flexible limits, you start to get more and more distortion in your drawing. This is where things can get a little wacky and where a drawing can start to feel wrong even though you're following all of your vanishing points correctly. A common place we see this is when we're drawing a box in two-point perspective and part of the box falls outside of the space between the two vanishing points on the horizon. Here you're going to start seeing a lot of distortion very quickly. The trick I use to avoid that is to, first off, keep everything between the vanishing points, but this also happens vertically as well. So if you can imagine there being a circle that passes through both vanishing points, anything that exists within this circle should be reasonably free of distortion. Anything outside of it is going to get crazy. Okay. It's worth mentioning that this technique is actually a simplification and, while entirely workable, not 100% accurate. The size of this circle actually depends on the field of view of your eyes, which is the angle radiating out from the eye that we can see comfortably at a glance. The technique I described above assumes a field of view of 90 degrees, which is not actually true to humans. We're more comfortably around 60 degrees, where anything beyond that is going into our peripheral vision. If you want to adhere to that, you can go through the trouble of figuring out where a circle 2/3 of the size I'm using would be. Though at least for practice and exercises, I wouldn't bother with it. Just figured I'd say so for the sake of technical accuracy. If you still don't understand, the next point about placing vanishing points may help, but be warned, it digs deeper into technical perspective. Oh gosh, oh no. This is one of the few technical perspective diagrams you're going to see from me. But there is value in at least understanding the concept specifically to learn how far apart your vanishing points should be. This diagram has a lot going on, so we'll break it down bit by bit. At the bottom, we have the station point. Station point, where the viewer stands. This is a somewhat abstract location. It doesn't actually represent a physical location in the world of your drawing, but it relates to the position from which the viewer is seeing the scene. We can find this point by drawing lines out from each vanishing point at a 45-degree angle to the horizon. They will meet at the station point with a 90-degree angle, a right angle, between them. Okay. That's what we're seeing. The rectangle in orange is the picture plane. Currently, we have it centered between the vanishing points, but it doesn't have to be. It can slide along the horizon line. I assume that's the horizon line. Our actual drawing exists within this rectangle, and you can actually picture it as the manifestation of your piece of paper, the window we use to look out into this world. If the picture plane were wide enough to be touching both vanishing points, the width defined by the yellow marks. Okay, the vanishing points. We would be looking at the scene with a field of view of 90 degrees. What this basically means is the viewer would be able to see a full 90-degree arc in front of them, and it would be all packed into the picture plane. This corresponds to the 90 degrees at the station point. Now, as discussed in the previous section about distortion, the human eye is limited to a field of view of about 60 degrees, so the picture plane containing a 90-degree arc of vision is going to result in some heavy distortion, where all this information is being crammed into a smaller space than it should. Okay. Therefore, we draw our picture plane to be about 2/3 of the distance between the left and right VPs. Are vanishing points. Again, the picture plane doesn't need to be centered between them. We're just talking about its width relative to the distance between the two vanishing points. Okay, so there's the 60 degrees. 90 degrees. One last thing worth mentioning, each of the two vanishing points govern a set of parallel lines. A requirement for this whole setup is that the lines governed by each vanishing point must be perpendicular to each other, meaning the lines going to the left vanishing point are perpendicular to the lines going to the right vanishing point. Wait, huh? Oh, okay. These are not two arbitrary vanishing points. This is what is illustrated with the two instances of 90 degrees in 3D space in the middle of the picture plane. I kinda understand, but I'm still confused. Is it a bird? No, it's a plane. No, it's just the sky. It's perspective. Terrifying. And hey, Miss Yellow. How's it going? How are you doing? We made it. We made it to homework. And the last homework of lesson 1. So we got plotted perspective. Oh, there's more homework than there was before. Oh gosh. 1 filled page of plotted perspective, 2 filled pages of rough perspective, a filled page of rotated boxes, and 2 filled pages of the organic perspective. Okay. And just curious, what happens next? Then you do the 250 box challenge. Interesting. I'm just looking ahead to see okay, so there's more. And it's got homework for each of these, I guess. Okay. Alrighty. Good. Been in from Puerto for 2 days. Feels nice. Oh, nice. Has the weather been pretty good? It's been kind of all over the place where I am. Unreliable. Okay. So if there's 4 things of homework, I think we should stick with the same pattern we've been doing, is a week for each homework. That's at least helpful for me, which means 4 weeks from now rather than 3 weeks, which is 1, 2, April already. Damn. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4. The 13th of April. So that is what I'm going to say tentatively is our next art study stream. Hopefully we won't have to move it or anything. Hopefully that's plenty of time. Why? Sorry, I've just got a random day where I just wrote retirement. I am not retiring. I wish. Just where was my head? Just retirement. I'm done. Wild weather when I was up there. It was bipolar. Second to last day in Puerto Rico. I was so supposed to ride a horse, but it was raining all day. Ah, man, that sucks. Have you ridden horses before? I rode horses a long time ago. When I was just a wee lad. Okie dokie. I've got that written down. Alright, so we have our homework. I'll update the Discord with this new homework set. So yeah, we've got that. I have not, but there's always a next time. That's true. Hopefully you get to ride a horse soon. It's nice from what I remember. I don't remember much, though. Yeah, I will update I will update the Discord with the links for that. And while I'm talking about the Discord, if you would like to join the Discord, there it is. It is 16 or up. If you'd like to join the Discord for some support or just sharing your art journey, we talk about the art studies and the homework that we're doing for that. We share the art that we're currently working on. And just, hey, if you want to do that. I need morale support. Exactly. Morale. That's what it's for. That's why I joined. So if you'd like to join the Discord, you are welcome to. Also, obviously, I'm sharing when I'm streaming. So Scribbles can yell at me. I don't yell. Sometimes. But no, that's there if you would like to. We've got maybe 20 minutes. Let me see if there's anything I can think of that we could maybe do in the 20 minutes I've got. I don't have much that I've been working on, to be honest. Oh, well, I can share, actually. It's actually on this thing. I've been working on brainstorming for my book. Because I'm thinking that I need to readjust how the lore works and how the setting works. So it's complicated now, but that's okay. It's gonna work. So this is quote unquote becoming my map to help me remember how things work. Yeah, the idea is that there's like this the Aether, essentially, in which the world exists, and that each god, which is called a star, in this world, created their own specific realm. So we've got the realm of fire, called Infernia. There's the realm of earth, called Torino, so on and so forth. And then originally, if I can find everything. Do. Trying to find all the layers here. I didn't label anything when I was doing this, I was just messing around with it. Which obviously was a bad idea on my part, but here we are. Where did I stick this one? It's on here somewhere. Oh, there it is. Okay. So yeah, originally there was the realm of essentially Twilight. So you have darkness and light in tandem. But then there was the Great Calamity. So following the Great Calamity, which is not called that, it's just called Astoran's Fall. But anyway, you have a splitting of the realm of Twilight, essentially. And so you've got the realm of shadows, Skatis, and the realm of starlight, Astoran. And Astoran's been pretty mucked up because it fell. It got destroyed. It was a big boom and all these things that happened. And Skatis, post Astoran's fall, has had this weird shadow magic darkness start to creep around, and usually shadow magic is something they, they're cool with. That's their thing. But unfortunately, this one seems to just spawn evil creatures that want to kill everybody, so that is obviously a problem. So they're not really sure why that's happening. They kind of just blame Astoran on everything, so Astoran can't fight back, there's nobody alive. So there's that. But I've been trying to map it out in my head to kind of decide where things go. and make it make a little bit more sense. This area here that kind of looks like a black hole is going to be the penumbra, where the guardians of the Shadows magic live. And yeah, I've got a couple of places in mind. I know that the farthest out regions are going to be the more cold regions where the loop people are, which the Loop Clan is the one that where is it? Loop Clan is what Talon is from, so that's Talon's clan. So I already knew that was going to be the cold area. I thought for sure you were going to say this area here that looks like a black hole is the black hole. I mean, for all intents and purposes, it's basically a black hole. It's going to be described very heavily like a black hole, but it's not leading to everlasting spaghettification. It's just kind of an area of dark. Very, very dark, very permeating shadow magic, essentially. Starting beef with the bystander. Not exactly the bystander, but you know, definitely starting beef with the people that can't defend themselves now. You haven't seen Talon? I made her last year. Yeah, I mean, she is a little bit newer. Yeah, she's from the Loop Clan. She joins in book 2, so she's actually a newer-ish character. So yeah. And fun, extra, special, secret fact, Corwin is also technically from the Loop Clan, though he's not there for most of his life. Oh, that girl before. My bad. No, you're good. I know it's not super clear being Wolf. I mean, how would you know? I didn't draw eyelashes. I didn't draw the Disney sexualization of the furry. Anyway, yeah, that's Talon. She's from there. And I know there's going to be more desert island-like areas here that they're going to go to in the second book as well. I'm just kind of stuck on the beginning because I'm trying to describe their graveyard, essentially, because the book starts off in the graveyard, with essentially a graveyard anyway, and I need to rewrite what that graveyard looks like, because with this new kind of more magical setting, it needs to make more sense, you know. So once I have unlocked my third eye and decided what that's gonna look like, I'm hopefully gonna make a lot more progress, because that's kind of what I'm hesitating on with the writing right now. Yeah, I almost was on Discord a little bit in the co-working while I was working on this, or with the writing, but y'all would have just seen a screen that didn't change for like an hour at a time, so that would have been boring. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of what I've been working on. The only other thing I've been working on is I've been trying to make kind of like a theme sort of thing. I don't know what to call it. I really don't. You know, I've seen like other streamers that will like post their like stream schedules or their announcements or the fun events that are happening, and they've always got like this main background and then their announcement on there, and I don't have something like that. So I've been trying to design something like that, as well as just like something for, I don't know, making things consistent. That's kind of what I'm trying to do. So I've been playing around with some things. I don't know if I'm really happy with the way that this turned out, but that's what I've been working on. So I've just been making a lot of space pictures, actually. That's all I've been doing. But yeah, that's kind of what I've been working on. I'm not super satisfied with the way that this looks. I want to adjust it slightly, but I did want it to look similar to the ones I had for the panels in the About page. So we're getting there. But I don't really want to do, this is just me. I don't super love the overlays. Only because for me personally, I like seeing the screen, and the overlay is gonna like make your screen even smaller, and so you can't see stuff as much. But yeah, so I personally am like, I don't really want an overlay. I want to do the overlay thing. I just want to have you know, a theme to rely on if I'm doing like an announcement or whatever. I can be like, hey, I'm doing this thing, or this is happening, or whatever. That would be fun. So that's kind of what I've been working on. It's not too much, honestly. But yeah, let's see here. Any work here? I know we said on Wednesday we're going to be working on probably maybe stickers again. I haven't totally decided. I've been kind of in a I really want to draw stage, but don't really know what to draw. That sort of stage. Not that there's not things to draw, it's just a can't make up my mind, I guess, sort of thing. Let me save this so I don't lose anything. Oh, it's gonna be mad. There's a million layers on this one. Okay. There we go. And I do know that very soon I'm gonna have to start working on art fight references. Let's see. Who should we start with? Talon and Kit are new, so they don't need new ones. Hawks is new. Scribbles is new. None of those need new ones. And Graham and Capes can sit on the sidelines. It's fine. I'm really leaning towards Zane. He was the very first human I drew, so it's rough in the first place. He doesn't look the right age. He doesn't look very good at all, but it's fine. It was my first human. So I knew that Zane needed an update. And so does Corwin. Corwin desperately needs an update. So these two definitely need to happen before Art Fight. I'm satisfied with Avery's. I think hers looks fine. Landon, I think I just need to do his hair again, because I'm not drawing his hair like this anymore. So if I just need to go in and shave him and redo his hair, and it'll be fine. And then Onyx, who I never draw or talk about because she's full of secrets. I'm not super satisfied. I like how this one turned out, but I can't seem to draw that well again. So, I mean, this didn't turn out too bad, but yeah. The problem with Onyx is that she's supposed to have a lot of, like, technology integrated into her clothing, and I can't draw that, and so I'm kind of limited by that sort of thing. But she probably could be okay by not doing one for this year. So I could just say, hey, I'm going to redo Zane and Corwin's because they're awful. Fix Landon's hair and call it a day. And if that's the case, I really don't need too much time. I don't think on that. Yeah. I'm excited for Art Fight, though. What do you think it's going to be? They said they were going to do something special this year because I think it's an anniversary. So I'm excited. That's mainly what I've been working on. But because we don't really have a lot of time, I'm not going to get started on early start on stickers or anything like that today. I think I'll wait. But yeah, I think I'm gonna go ahead and call it. I'm gonna be good and maybe go to bed on time. We all know I'm not gonna do that. Anyway, let's pop over here and find somebody to raid. Let's see here. Ba-ba-ba-bum. Who is streaming some art today? I'm looking in the wrong category. There we go. Mm-hmm. Oh. Shuji still going strong. We'll raid Shuji. Why not? Why not? Here's our raid message if you'd like to use that when we raid. Thank you all so much for hanging out. I appreciate it. I hope you were able to learn something or just be confused alongside of me. And again, I really appreciate y'all bearing with me with this art studies or joining me if you've been working alongside. Even if you're not sharing it or anything, just the moral support is always nice. And it's nice to learn things together. Have a great night, Scribbles. You too, Mountain Lou. Have a great night. Thank you again. Thank you for sharing your progress. It's always very encouraging. And again, it's really fun to learn together. So, yeah. We'll be back on Wednesday for me actually doing art instead of just being confused about boxes. I'm planning on doing some stickers for Kingdom Hearts Dream Drop Distance creatures. But that's bound. It could change. I could change my mind at any moment. We never know. But that's the plan for now. So we'll be doing some of that. Cute little guys being drawn. And then Friday we'll be continuing Spiritfarer. Maybe finishing it. Maybe finishing it next week. We'll see. But yeah. Thank you all again. I'll see you on Wednesday. Bye! Scribbles Raid!